everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Silicon Dreams with Leemon Baird and Mance Harmon, the rockstar co-CEOs, co-founders of Hedera Hashgraph, as we know it. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time out here at Hello Future Life for chatting with me, Sonia. I do have a few questions for the community and for the general audiences in large who are looking to come and build on Hedera Hashgraph. So, my first question would be to any one of you. You know, in general, when people look at Hedera, they think of Hedera as the DLT to build enterprise and ESG applications on. I would like to ask how this perception came to be, how much is fact, how much is myth, and also ask you if we have taken some steps in the direction towards driving enterprise adoption for Hedera.
That's excellent. So of course we can do everything, but we really do have quite a bit of traction with enterprise and ESG. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, enterprises want a well-governed DLT. They really want to build on a ledger that is well-governed. And they also want one that has predictable pricing in dollars, not in a cryptocurrency whose price keeps going up and down. And they want one that is going to be fast. If you're going to be doing lots of transactions, you want them to be very inexpensive and be able to do many per second. And they wanted to be able to have not just tokens, but also HCS-like things. There are consensus services where you can store information. So there's been a number of aspects of this that really make it friendly to enterprise. We've tried very hard to be compliant as much as we can in various ways. We've just tried to do everything the right way from the beginning, and that is appealing to enterprise. And so we have quite a bit of traction in the enterprise, and we continue to pursue that. And then for ESG, if you can tokenize very inexpensively and have very fast TPS and build very good markets, then it's good for tokenizing things like carbon credits and having markets in them. In addition to which, we are incredibly green. The CO2 footprint of each transaction is lower than any other ledger. There was a UCL report that showed that, University College of London. And then in addition, that small footprint we have, we buy carbon credits to be carbon neutral and then buy a few more to be carbon negative. So we're carbon negative, which is nice, but the best form of energy is the energy you don't use, and we have the extremely low carbon footprint even before we buy the credits. So we're inherently green to begin with, and we have the properties you would want for a green market, and that has tended to attract green markets. So yes, I think we have quite a bit of traction in both of those. In other areas too, but those are two things that we really have seen quite a bit of traction on.
Yeah, I agree with everything he said, of course. I think the only point maybe I would add is that we've built the solution and the governance model not just for enterprise, but for any really high volume, high throughput, important, mission critical solution. So it's not always enterprise, right? You can have really large consumer focused applications or dApps that get built that benefit in the same way as enterprise benefits from all of those features of the platform, including the governance. So I would say that it's designed to handle the most critical and large solutions that one can imagine in the world of DLT or crypto, and that just sort of naturally results. Well, and then of course the governance model is made up of world-class enterprise organizations and universities, and they're building on top of us. And so it's natural that we would sort of have that reputation as a result of that. But it's true, right? We're building for them with the belief that if they're representative of their industries, then we're building the right things for those industries.
And I do have to jump in. I strongly agree with all of that. So we've been talking about enterprise and ESG. But we're at a conference right now with lots of little startups doing art and doing fun NFT things. And so there's a lot of that also. We have a thriving community doing those fun things. So it's not just enterprise and ESG, but it definitely is that too.
Yeah.
It's because of the way Hashgraph was also incepted, right? Yeah. Like the strong throughput that we have, especially with the low fixed costs. I think all of those things do contribute to making it favorable for enterprises. I do have a follow-up question on enterprises. We have enterprises like Google, ServiceNow, Dell, IBM, Boeing building on top of Hashgraph, right? Because they represented they represent some of the governing council members as well. I think a very well-known case of an enterprise building on Hashgraph is Avery Dennison, which is contributing to thousands of transactions per second. And Avery Dennison uses that for carbon footprint tracking, and they use the Hedera consensus service. I would love to ask if we know of any publicly known use cases of any of these other enterprises or any proposals that they have put through which will see similar adoption of Hashgraph by these investors.
Public. That's a good question. So what comes to mind, and you can help me remember, but what comes to mind are recent discussions of large solutions being in development or having early prototypes gone to market in the banking industry as well as in the auto industry. So Kia and Hyundai Kia have announced ESG types of solutions, related solutions using our tech. But they're not council members, which is really interesting, right? Giant organization, big use case that they're going to derive a lot of value from, and they're not a council member. They should be, right? They should be. So anything else that immediately comes to mind for
the
you?
Flutterwave just was in the news.
Yes,
and that's huge. That's not a council member, but that's enormous in Africa, and we're making a huge change there. So we're seeing really big things happen, not just council members, but council members too. And non-council member enterprises building large applications. And there's a number that we see that have been announced in the news and also others in the pipeline.
Yeah.
I've seen ServiceNow leveraging Hedera because I spoke to Suchi, who is a governing council who sits on behalf of ServiceNow, and she was very excited about using Hedera for ESG within ServiceNow as well. I am definitely looking forward to some of the other council members really driving the mass adoption.
Sure.
That's why I was wondering if we have any prototypes.
Nothing that's public that we can talk about at this point. Yeah.
That's fine. Well, to the point of banking, right? And of course, a lot of the transactions worldwide, globally, that happen that relate to financial transactions. Now, with Hedera's recent inception of the stablecoin studio, I would love to ask if Hedera foresees stablecoin onboarding the next millions of people to Web3 in a smooth, frictionless way, especially given some of the pains that people have faced for ages, like cross-border remittance.
I think so. So cross-border remittances is a huge deal. The unbanked is a huge deal. There's a billion people that can't get a bank because they don't have identity, they don't have all these other things. Exactly. And so stablecoins are a big deal for that. We have council members that are interested in these things and are have done POCs and are building projects. We have non-council members doing these things. And so I think stablecoins are important. And Stablecoin Studio makes it easy for anyone to just build a stablecoin. You can do it in minutes, and you get one that works, and then you have all these tools to make it better and different in various ways. That's important to make things very frictionless for developers and very easily get a first version, and then you can easily add other features to it. And so that's what that was focused on.
Now, I think that the regulatory environment plays a huge role in the mainstreaming of crypto, especially as it relates to stable coins. There are various jurisdictions in the world that are ahead of where we are here in the United States. But I think deposit coins are likely to be an important approach to bringing crypto mainstream with existing bank accounts and existing banking relations. So yes, I think that from a Hedera perspective, it's incredibly important. It's part of a larger theme that we have believed from the beginning, and that is that tokenization is going to rule the world. Everything of value is going to be tokenized. Stablecoins, of course, represents one category of that. We, as Leemon's already pointed out, we care a lot about participating in that market, and that's why we were leading from an industry perspective in the creation of the Stablecoin Studio. It literally is now the case that anybody that wants to build a stablecoin can download the studio and within a day or two have a stablecoin solution with third-party support, all integrated, ready to go to market, right? It's that That is what's needed not just for stable coins, but for multiple categories in the crypto industry. We have to remove friction from the process of developing solutions, making it easier for developers to more quickly build their solutions and shorten those times, their go-to-market times for those products. So, and Stablecoin Studio is one of the earliest forms of that within Hedera.
I would love to expand on that question because we are talking about building tooling for frictionless onboarding of not just the end users but also the developers. Right? Hedera has made a lot of progress in its EVM compatibility, and it seems like now a decision has been made that when it comes to smart contracts, instead of having a new separate smart contract engine, Hedera's focus would be on leveraging the EVM part of Hedera to actually bring on developers, right, Solidity developers from Ethereum, from other ecosystems, and support the development of smart contracts on Hedera. So I want to confirm if that indeed is the strategy. And what I would also like to ask is for developers who already have applications or who are building on layers on Ethereum or layer twos, what kind of benefits can they avail by building on top of Hedera, and what kind of interoperability could they, of course, I know Hedera as a chain works hand in hand with a lot of chains, so definitely it excites.
Absolutely. And this is not a recent decision. This is our strategy has been for a while now. We, on day one, were EVM compatible, meaning you can take a smart contract from Ethereum, you can run it on us, and it works. But that's different from EVM equivalent or Ethereum equivalence, which is, sure, the smart contract is compatible, but is the whole ecosystem of things around the smart contract, tools out there that reach out and touch it, compatible. And if you have an ERC20 or an ERC721, that's simple. It's inside the smart contract. It works. But we have these native tokens. Can we make them look like they are an ERC20 or look like they're an ERC721 to some external tool? So it thinks it's talking to a smart contract, but it's really talking to this very fast, very inexpensive native token. And so we've put an enormous amount of effort in the last year or two making it better and better in those ways. It's a very high priority, and it's been paying off. We have people that switch from other L1s and L2s to us. You asked, well, why would someone switch? Well, you switch because it is fast and inexpensive and reliable and well-governed and secure, and all of those things we were talking about, denominated in dollar costs rather than other variable costs. All of those reasons are reasons to switch from something else to us. And we've made it as easy as possible, and it will continue to be a high priority, to continue adding features to make it easier and easier to do that.
Yeah, I would just add that for at least 2.5, maybe 3 years, we have made the bet. We believed back then that when it comes to that smart contract layer, if you want to think about a tech stack in the world of crypto, there's sort of a layer there for smart contracts, that layer would consolidate around EVM, right? There were a bunch of other layer ones that decided to build their own equivalents.
And that is harder.
And that is harder. I mean, there are technical reasons why you might want to do that, but it's in a vacuum. It doesn't understand the importance of being able to integrate with the existing ecosystem that's already built up around an EVM standard. So we believe that the EVM would become standard. It's now playing out exactly as we thought it would, and for that reason, we've focused on EVM since the beginning. And now EVM equivalence is something that's high priority as well.
And this is really cool. So in 2018, we had to decide what smart contract language will we use. Should we invent a new one? I'll bet I could invent a better one. Well, I think I could. Solidity is easy to improve on. But that's not the point.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a good gamble. It paid off. Yes.
And we have finished our JSON RPC, tooling, right? So now smart contracts can be ported over more easily. Would this also mean that integration with oracles has become easier? Because up until a year ago, if you wanted to integrate with an oracle, as you said, it didn't have true EVM equivalence at that time. So the oracles and the payload they would send back to us, it had to be different from what they would send to a pure EVM chain. So has that improved now, and can developers integrate with existing oracles with ease?
Yeah, in fact, we just had an Oracle that we announced, or that we didn't announce it, but yes, an Oracle recently announced that it's building on us, which is very cool. And so our stablecoin studio integrates with it and makes it easy for you to build something that uses that Oracle, which is good. You want it to be easy to access it.
Can we use
Yeah.
all Chainlink stuff that is
Yeah.
available for Ethereum, for example?
There's a number of Oracles, and they just need to integrate with us. But yeah, so just this week or last week, an Oracle was announced, and there'll be more, I think.
I think
Sure.
our EVM journey towards EVM
Yeah.
equivalence would make it now easier for them to.
It might. I don't know.
Okay.
But I know that things like Stablecoin Studio makes it easier to use the Oracle once it's integrated, and that's important.
Thank you. I do want to ask about our governing council and the strategy around it, right? Now, Hedera, from the decentralized community, has always drawn criticism because of the fact that we have a governing council, right? For a lot of people think of it being centralized, though it can't be farther from the truth. But I would love to hear it from you, right? The governing council that we have, is it a move towards centralization or decentralization?
It is a move to decentralization. We have 29 very independent groups that very transparently discuss and do on-chain voting, and that have a reputation to protect. You couldn't bribe them with $1 million to do something bad. You had to bribe them with $1 billion, but you couldn't bribe them with $1 million. As opposed to other ledgers where they'll say something like, well, everyone can get involved in governance, and then what happens in practice is that power consolidates. You get a handful of core people who end up controlling it. Handful of core developers or core leaders that end up controlling it. You don't know who they are. They're not a big organization with a reputation to protect. You don't really have any control of it. Human society, it's funny, there have always been people who say, I like anarchies, I don't want any form of governance. But human nature prevents that. You will always have something grow. And then the question is, do you want to have just a few handful of people that kind of self-appointed themselves to control it and they have all the power? Or do you want to set it up from the beginning, because it's hard to retrofit these things, that you're going to have a large number of organizations, 29, not the 5 that some ledgers have, that really 5 individuals who have power, or a dozen pools that have power.
A lot of people don't realize it, but many times even though you call it proof of stake, a lot of the times that staking is delegated to certain nodes, and those nodes, as you said, are controlled by a group of individuals.
And so you get 6 people staking that have 50% of the stake. Okay, so this is what we avoid. We avoid this problem with the 29 in the council. The council continues to grow, and these are organizations that have their own mind, and they keep checks and balances on each other. And I would never trust a single council member, but I don't have to. This is why a representative democracy is better than a monarchy or a dictatorship, because I don't trust any single person in government, but I want them to have checks and balances on each other. I even like a government that has 3 branches of government rather than 1 branch of government, because they act as checks and balances on each other. So I would argue we have the most decentralized governance of any ledger, and I think that this is what is attracting a lot of people to Hedera. You asked about enterprises earlier. They really want something that is well governed, not by a handful of self-appointed people that somehow ended up with power, but by something that is visible and transparent. We're not only more decentralized, we're more transparent, because we publish the minutes of the meetings where they talk to each other. And it is on-chain governance. And the on-chain governance is preceded by off-chain discussions that are published. And 29 is a much bigger number than the 5 or 6 you might find in other areas. So I am I would attribute a great deal of our success to our decentralized governance.
So just add a couple of points. One is, when we talk about decentralization, it's important to define precisely what we mean. And so you had alluded to one aspect of that, and that is decentralization of the nodes that are participating in ordering the transaction ordering. Today in Hedera, we have 29 different organizations that are all participating in the ordering of those transactions. That's way better decentralization than Ethereum or Bitcoin as they exist today. It's also the case that,
I'm going to interject here, but could you actually explain why it is better than Bitcoin and Ethereum? Because for a lot of people,
they won't understand that.
The context.
Okay.
Sure. So Bitcoin has a handful of developers, like 5 people, that end up writing the code. Now you could say theoretically, anyone in the world could join this group and could have influence. But what happens with human nature is if you don't set it up to prevent it, power consolidates. You also have a dozen mining pools. Maybe a mining pool is millions of people all contributing a lot, or maybe the person who owns the mining pool has most of the contributions. It's hard to determine that in some cases. Okay, so again, that's a small number, a lot less than 29. Ethereum, you have a very small number, 6 the last time I looked, that had the majority of the staking.
In fact, even Leo, which is one of the most advanced or most widely used staking protocol, ultimately just has 5 nodes. So
there you go. And then the number of nodes themselves. So in Ethereum, it's gone from an enormous number, it's gone down tenfold, recently. But not only that, a huge fraction of them are in Amazon. Okay, so Amazon Corporation has a large fraction of actually the nodes themselves. So the staking is not as decentralized as you want. The nodes, there's a lot of them, but there's a lot fewer than there used to be, and they're consolidated. There's also mechanisms that cause one person to run multiple nodes, which means it's not even as decentralized as it looks. There's just, if you just set up a system and don't ensure decentralization and hope for the best, then over time, it centralizes. That's just what happens.
One other thing that we could possibly discuss is the fact that Ethereum moving to proof of stake also means that the contribution is proportional to the Ethereum that is staked to a node. Versus, if I'm not wrong on Hedera, there is equal voting right given to all 29 council members, and in future we will go up to 36.
Yes, but we're mixing two different ideas here. One is how do you get consensus on a given transaction? And one is how do you govern the network, like decide what the code base is going to be. Two separate things. For governing the code base, it is 29 members with exactly equal votes. And it'll grow to 39. I mean, it's growing still. But they each have guaranteed equal votes, guaranteed. It can never consolidate down to 5. It's always going to be equal. Or it can never be a long tail where you have 1 million people, but 5 of them have most of the power. For the nodes, it's 29 right now that are proportional to the stake, although right now it is pretty staked evenly, and so they'll pretty much have equal. And in the future, we might have lots of nodes, or we might not. It's pretty good either way. But the governance is exactly equal voice from each one, and it is guaranteed in the way it was constructed from the beginning. This is one of those things you can't retrofit later. You really need to start with the right governance if you want to have decentralized governance. You have to start that way.
Yeah, just to add a final thought, a lot of people sort of have this knee-jerk reaction that if it's not possible or allowed today for Hedera to just allow 10,000 nodes to join the network, then it must not be decentralized. And my reaction to that is, if you were to add another 10,000 nodes to Ethereum today, it would not be any more decentralized than it already is, because it's the power is already consolidated into the hands of a few. Adding another 1,000 or 10,000 anonymous nodes doesn't solve that problem. Doesn't solve that problem. And so it's the case that even today, and by design from the beginning, the governance model and the way that we've architected things is meant to be the most decentralized, both in terms of ordering transactions as well as deciding on what the code base ends up becoming.
I think because of the way Hashgraph was designed and the fact that we bring in timestamp, it also completely removes arbitrage opportunities and the fixed transaction fees. I think that is very powerful, especially when you're looking at finance, and we have seen so many MEV exploits, etc. So there are a lot of good things. It's just that there are perceptions around decentralization. So continuing on the thought of decentralization, right now we have over 2/3 of HBAR in circulation, and some people have said that we had a lot more HBAR release quite ahead of the schedule. So I would like to ask you, are we on schedule or have things changed along the way? And also for the general public to understand, does having more HBAR in circulation out there actually help us or hurt us?
So it helps us. And so the big thing that has changed over the last few years is that we've created the foundations. We've given lots of HBARs, taken it from Hedera and given it to the foundations, and they're giving out to the world. So these grant-giving organizations have been giving grants. This is a very good thing. Now, we also had things like the original SAFs, which were coins that we were required to distribute. And it's interesting, many of those monthly distributions that have been going on for years are ending about right now, which is kind of cool. Some of them ended a few days ago, some of them ended in 2 months, but quite a few of these obligations end.
We had a pretty good vesting schedule. A lot of
Yeah.
tokens just vest in a year or two. We actually had a multi-year vesting.
Exactly. So we spread them out. And now we're kind of at the end of most of those, which is nice. And we did end up creating these grant giving organizations. And so those grants are actually doing good in the ecosystem. And now that 2/3 have been released, there just isn't a lot left to release. There's only a third left to release. And that will happen slowly over time. And so I think that this is a good thing. And you and I were talking earlier about how there is a real positive to any token. When a lot of it is distributed, then you don't have any more distribution going on. Or you have, when all of it is distributed, there's no distribution going on. And when there's most of it distributed, then you have little distribution going on. And that's actually a helpful thing as well. But yeah, the major thing that has changed in the last few years is the 3 grant giving organizations: the DLT Science Foundation, the HBAR Foundation, and the Hashgraph Association.
Yeah. Not much to add. I think that pretty well covers it.
That pretty much sums it up, yes. And a lot of studies have found that once you have more than 70% of the token in circulation, the price of the token actually starts stabilizing at that point, because you don't have big token releases and waves happening, and that allows for the token price to grow and also stabilize more organically. We are talking about the HBAR circulation strategy. As we were talking about it, let's also just talk about the native staking strategy. And recently, our native staking was reduced from 6.5 to variable 2.5.
Well, it's a variable.
Yeah, it's variable, but it can be up to 2.5 at most. What was the reason for that change? Because a lot of community members thought, we're getting some good returns in terms of native staking, and now it's significantly dropped, at least when you see the daily HBAR accumulating in your wallet. What was the reason for that, and how does it help Hedera ecosystem in the long run?
Oh, yes. So remember the history. Let's go back to the history. A year ago, the staking started, the staking rewards and staking. And from the beginning, it was made very clear, Hedera is not funding this. In fact, the code was set up so that staking rewards would not start until account 800 had a big enough balance. And Hedera wasn't putting HBARs into account 800. It had to be third parties that had their own control of it. And so from the very beginning, it was said, there will be no staking rewards until we start having external parties putting enough into account 800 so that then 800 can be automatically paying staking rewards. This did happen. It was third parties. It was the grant giving organizations that ended up doing this. And so then we were able to start staking. We were able to have a high rate to start off with, to encourage wallets to integrate it and for exchanges to integrate it. There's an initial cost to integrate a new feature into your software. And so this was to encourage the ecosystem to get built to allow staking, which happened. So now wallets in support staking. I was just talking to a wallet maker today. I was talking to them too, but I was also talking to a hardware wallet maker, which was yeah, it's pretty cool. So it really does look pretty cool. But it handles staking. Okay, and it's not even released yet. It'll be released soon, but it is handles staking. So that strategy was successful. And so the amount was in that account. It was a large amount, and it went down pretty fast because it was being given out at a high rate. But it was a fixed rate. Now, clearly in the long term, you wouldn't want a fixed rate. What you would really like to do is have it come down smoothly and be proportional to what's in 800. So when 800 has a lot, you have a higher rate. When 800 has a little bit, you have a lower rate, and just kind of adjusts itself.
Just for context, 00800 is the account from which the staking rewards are released.
Yes, that's what I just said.
Yeah,
yes, a second ago. Correct. And so 800 is the account that pays the staking rewards. And so what we did is we had set up the code initially to not even start staking until anyone could do it. Actually, a number of community members donated to 800, and it got started. And then it was set for a fixed rate in order to do this bootstrapping, encouraging people to start. But you wouldn't want it to stay at a fixed rate forever, because then when it's run out, you would suddenly drop to a low rate, and you don't really want sudden changes in anything. And so it was modified to do this proportional thing. The amount that's being rewarded is proportional to the amount in 800. And so there have been additional donations. We saw that recently. 800 is now coming down smoothly, and the rate is coming down smoothly. There is still HBARs going back into the account from the transaction fees, but that's not very much. Over time, as we get more and more transactions per second, you'll have more fees going in. The rate will be able to go back up as you get more of those, but it's all self-regulating and self-automated. And Hedera itself is hands-off and has been from the beginning. Hedera never put any H-bars in. Hedera just set that initial rate, but even that now is self-regulating. So Hedera doesn't even set the rate anymore. It self-regulates.
I do have two last questions before we wrap up, right? And since we are talking about decentralization, DeFi over here, staking, Vance, this one is for you.
Okay.
Of course, we spoke about Hedera's focus on enterprise. We have seen a lot of traction on that side of things. But what I would love to ask is when it comes to the more traditional Web3 tooling or Web3 infra that we see around DeFi, NFTs, Web3 gaming, what is Hedera's marketing focus on those areas?
So when it comes to, or let's think about how those categories get built out today. I think it's important to understand how the ecosystem, the Hedera ecosystem at large, kind of works, if you will. There's, of course, the Hedera Governing Council that does all the things that we've talked about here already. There is Swirlds Labs that can, under contract with Hedera, builds the builds the code base for Hedera. It also does marketing for Hedera. And then there are the grant-giving organizations. So there's the HBAR Foundation, there's the THA, the Hashgraph Association, and the DLT Science Foundation. So first off, it's not Hedera's focus to do marketing on any given category necessarily. And Hedera doesn't direct the foundations and what they should be focused on. So that's a really important point, because what ends up happening is the various foundations have their own focus areas, and they make decisions on what projects to fund in any given category, including DeFi. The HBAR Foundation has made investments in the DeFi ecosystem for Hedera, and to some degree, they're the ones that have been marketing the work that they've been doing. It's not the case that Hedera is marketing the work that the HBAR Foundation is doing. So you asked a very specific question. What is Hedera's marketing strategy for DeFi? And that's a very long-winded way of saying that Hedera doesn't do marketing of any given category.
Hedera LLC does not.
Hedera LLC does not. The foundations, of course, do, and they do their own marketing, and they've done marketing for the DeFi ecosystem. Well, HBAR Foundation, is, in particular, I've noticed, has done marketing on the DeFi ecosystem and funded those projects. And our organization has done sort of the top level LLC level of marketing that the community sees.
Thank you. And my final question, it's a two-part question. So decentralized recovery, when it rolls out, will it use Hedera's consensus service or Hedera's infrastructure?
No.
Okay.
It is not specific to Hedera.
That's a good answer, not a bad answer. You may say, no, we're going to go use some other layer one. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, I didn't say that.
No.
So it is not specific to Hedera. It's not specific to blockchain. It is a way for you to have any secret, which can be a key on a blockchain, it can be a key on Hedera, or it could be your password list, or it could be your favorite recipe. Whatever your secret is, that was sort of silly, but that actually is true. You could store that too. You could also store things like identity, decentralized identity.
Okay.
Any kind of a key. You can have pass keys on your phone. You can be storing those pass keys that get you into websites. The idea is we are moving into a world. Web 2 is sort of true already. Web 3 is even more true, where your whole life is controlled by these secrets you have. And what do? You can give them to a trusted third party like FTX. They'll take care of it. Maybe not. Or you keep it yourself and then you lose your phone and you've lost everything in your life. You've lost all your wealth. You've lost all your identity. You've lost your passwords. You don't even have your recipe anymore. Or what you do is you split it into pieces and give it to friends. And this is just done over the internet, just using a protocol that's going to be submitted as an RFC, an actual IETF internet protocol.
Got it. Okay.
It's not a blockchain thing. It's not a Hedera thing.
Okay.
But the reason we're pushing it is because it is so desperately needed in our industry. And if we want our industry to go out and reach its potential of Web3 and changing the world, we've got to have safety nets for the ordinary people we want to reach, the mainstream people. We have to have a safety net where they can recover their secrets. And so it's needed by us, but it has nothing to do with us.
So, okay, that makes sense, because we did talk about decentralized recovery last time when we met. And I was thinking that when it comes to the aspects of people providing DREG as a service, and also the part where you need to have constant communication with each of your key holders or partial key holders, I thought something like Hedera could be a layer on which that communication happens.
You don't need it. You do it over the internet, and it's private. So no one even knows who your helpers are or how many you have. So there's no need to make it public on a ledger. It should be private on the internet.
Right. That makes sense. So to complement that question, then my next question, and this is my last question, is we of course have seen Avery Dennison creating 1,000 transactions per second. Hedera, if I'm not wrong, in theory has been tested up to 400,000 transactions per second, or in the tunes of 100,000.
Okay, so consensus can go very fast like that. For processing transactions, it depends on what kinds of transactions you have. Right now, we've slowed it down to 10,000 per second. I think we'll be able to raise that if we need to. And when it gets too high for the network, we'll just do sharding.
Yeah.
Right, and then you can go to as many shards as you need.
We do have a scalable strategy in place already.
That's right.
But my question was, what kind of applications do you foresee leveraging this impressive throughput?
Excellent question. Two things. One is recording information, like what Atma is doing right now. So they're doing 1,000 a second. You get 10 of them, you have 10,000 a second. Although actually, there may be people type pipeline that are even bigger than that. But you have that, and then you have tokens. Everything of value will be tokenized in the world. And the main thing you do with tokens, the most of your transactions are transfers. And we can do 10,000 token transfers per second right now.
For record, Visa has a transaction speed of 15,000 transactions per second.
Yes.
And Visa handles so many transactions today.
And
nobody calls them slow. So
no one calls them slow. And 10,000 we slowed it down to. We can make that faster. And then when we get to some limit of how fast we can go to sharding, and then we can go to as many shards as you need. But I think those are the two main things, is tokenization and recording information. And other ledgers do tokenization, but don't do the recording thing. So we have both. The consensus service does the recording, like a notary public, and then our token service does tokens. Both of them.
That is an important differentiation, because on a lot of chains, the recording of information is done through a transaction. And that thereby reduces the network speed and also increases the fees associated with it. Whereas our consensus messages right now are 0.0001 US dollars. So, for any company, it's actually easier to even just use this for billions of transactions versus even maintaining their own infrastructure.
Right.
You're right.
That was the point. We if you increase capacity or performance of your computer, the range of applications that you'll be able to address goes up. And we knew that if we achieved those results, really low cost, really high throughput, then we would be able to address a category of use cases that the other layer one simply wouldn't be able to touch.
And any final parting thoughts to the builders out in this space, especially from Hedera founders?
I just want to say thank you. We're building the plumbing. It's of no good whatsoever if no one builds on it. The builders are changing the world. And I think they really are. I think we're going to end up in a world that is different and better in fundamental ways because of what they are building. So to the builders, I want to say thank you. You are changing the world and making it a better world to live in. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I would just add that now is an excellent time to be building. Right now is when you want to be building, so that when crypto spring arrives, you're ready to take advantage of that. And so it's an exciting time, notwithstanding the fact that we're in the middle of crypto winter. Now's a good time.
Now is a good time to build. Well, thank you, Leemon. Thank you, Mance, for your time. So this is Sonia signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.